Welcome to the EHR end-to-end web-based training for front desk and billing. Please use the video player buttons at the bottom of the screen to move forward or backward during the presentation. The table of contents at the left side of the screen can also be used to jump to specific portions of this training. Let's get started. Here are the topics we are going to cover in this training. We'll talk about why the conversion is important to the university. We'll provide you with a high-level end-to-end overview of the clinic process and see what's changing and what's not. We'll explore some of the basic components of GE centricity, and we'll also cover the new document management system as well as Faxing patient documents. You may be asking why we are converting to a new electronic health record or EHR system. There are several reasons for that. The first reason is that there are several issues with our current EHR system BackChart. The BackChart interface is unstable and has a tendency to go down several times a week and requires close monitoring. The technology it is built on is Adobe Flash, which is no longer supported by Mozilla Firefox or Chrome because of security concerns. While it does work with Internet Explorer, we're not sure for how long into the future that will be the case. It supports only ICD-9 codes. BackChart announced earlier this year that the system is not now and will not be in the future meaningful use compliant, and it also lacks robust reporting extract functionality. The second reason we need to convert to a new EHR system is that all facilities that fall under HIPAA regulations must start using ICD-10 codes by October 1, 2015. Another reason for conversion is that we would like to strengthen our ability to track and report on our outcome measures. And lastly, if we pursue meaningful use, we have a January 1, 2016 deadline for implementing both a compliant EHR system and a patient portal. Our solution for addressing these objectives is to leverage our existing GE centricity system, which is currently used for scheduling and billing, and implement the EHR chart functionality. Our go-live date is planned for Tuesday, August 25th. Before diving into the details of centricity, document management, and faxing, we're going to take a high-level overview of the end-to-end clinic process. This is meant to give you the 50,000-foot view of what is happening, similar to when you look at Google Maps. If you zoom in too closely without understanding what city, state, or even country you are in, it's hard to get your bearings. In this section, we'll start broad and then get into just a bit of detail for each major part of the process. The main components of the end-to-end clinic process, both today and when we go live, are this. The patient comes in and checks in with the front desk. Then the patient goes to an exam room and receives an examination and treatment from a provider. Then the patient goes up to the front desk to check out, and then ultimately billing processes the payments. So the high-level process stays the same. However, at least a couple of things regarding how each group does their part and what system they will use to process a step will change with the new system. Those changes are highlighted in red on this slide. Now let's take a closer look at each one of those four areas. Here's a closer look at the check-in process. The front desk greets the patient and has them fill out the applicable paper intake and outcome measure forms. A new step for the front desk is that rather than manually adding up the paper outcome measure forms and writing down the total score for the provider, they will instead open the patient's chart and enter the patient's answers for the provider to review and sign. Paper fee tickets will still be used at the time of go live, so the front desk will still have those printed and ready for the provider. You'll notice that this slide has a few items highlighted in red indicating a change in how something is processed. Let's review the provider steps. The intern or provider will come up to the front desk to greet the patient and pick up the paper fee ticket and any paper forms that require signatures. Once in the exam room, the provider will log into the patient's chart and review the outcome measures document that was entered by the front desk. Once they have reviewed the information with the patient, the provider will sign the document in the patient's chart. The provider will also open up their own encounter, which generates SOAP notes and billing charges, and update as they evaluate the patient. Something that remains the same as the current process is that the provider will continue to describe the exam, treatment, and any fees to the patient and have the patient sign the paper informed consent and any applicable non-covered services or ABN forms, as well as the paper fee ticket. Providers will then sign their orders, which generate billing charges, and sign their notes. Finally, they will bring the patient, along with the signed paperwork and fee ticket, back up to the front desk. At Go Live, the checkout process for the front desk will be very similar to the way it is today. The differences are that scanned documents will be completed using the new document management application, and a copy of the non-covered services, or ABN, is attached to the paper fee ticket for billing, if applicable. They will continue to schedule follow-up appointments and process payments in daily batches as they do today. Billing is responsible for reconciling paper fee tickets with assigned orders, reviewing and adjusting diagnosis codes as necessary for insurance purposes, entering payments into patient accounts, and handling billing inquiries. So far, we've covered the topics of why we're converting to GE Centricity for our EHR needs, and an overview of what's changing and what's not with the overall process of seeing patients in the clinics. Now let's take a look at some of the basic components of the GE Centricity system. We're going to take a look at these three areas: chart desktop, chart or patient chart, and documents. We'll start by exploring the chart desktop, which is available in the left-hand navigation. The chart desktop is a summary screen or personal homepage for the logged-in user. Though there are several options available for you to explore on the left navigation, such as alerts and flags, documents, file attachments, fax status, and more, we're going to begin our tour with the summary view. From here, you can see your daily appointment schedule, documents that you need to review and may require action on your part, and alerts and flags that may be of interest. The top ribbon also provides you with options to frequently used actions, such as looking up a specific patient or looking at your most recently visited patient charts. Providers can easily complete orders from this location, and all users can create or view flags and alerts. Before we go into more navigation details, let's define what alerts and flags are. Take a moment to read through the definitions of flags, care alerts, and pop-ups. When you're done, continue to the next slide. Now let's take a look at the charts section of Centricity. First, we'll need to look up a patient. Go to the next slide to watch a brief demonstration on how to search for a specific person. To find a specific patient, click the Find Patient button on the ribbon. The Find Patient window will appear on your screen. Go to the field labeled Search For. Type in the patient's name beginning with their last name, followed by a comma, and then their first name. Then click Search or press the Enter key on your keyboard. You can also type in just the first few letters of the patient's last name. When the search results have loaded, double-click the patient's name to bring up their chart. The patient's chart is now loaded. Now let's move on to an overview of the chart section of Centricity. You are now viewing a patient's chart. When you first pull up a patient's chart, you are brought to the chart summary view. The patient's information is displayed below the ribbon, and you'll find details such as name, age, date of birth, phone number, responsible provider, patient ID number, insurance type, and group. The top ribbon is a little different in the chart area than it is in the chart desktop. A couple differences you may want to note is the presence of the phone note and the chart summary buttons. Phone notes are a way to document a patient who calls in with a question for the provider who isn't available at the time. You can input the details of the patient's question into the phone note, route it to the provider, and the provider can respond back. The phone note is then a permanent part of the patient's chart. The left navigation is similar to the chart desktop in that there are several menu items for you to choose. The options you see in the left navigation under the summary header are a mirror image of what you see in the main window. Problems, medications, allergies, directives, and alerts and flags. To open or maximize any one of the summary windows that appears in the main window, click the corresponding item in the left navigation or click the Maximize button. The left navigation is also where you will start a new document and edit any open documents. Documents is a broad term that applies to encounters, forms, attachments, and other types of communication. It is in this section that outcome measures will be entered by the front desk and where providers will review and sign them. It is also where providers will go to start their own patient visit encounter. Let's take a closer look at the document section. If a document has a paperclip icon next to it, that means there's an attachment. Double-clicking on it will not open the attachment. Instead, you'll need to click the Attach button. The information you see in the preview pane at the bottom of the screen is the document properties information. Once you've clicked the Attach button, the attachment will open in a new window. For documents that do not have an attachment, you can use the preview pane at the bottom of the screen. However, if you are trying to read some documents, it causes you to do a lot of scrolling. You could click on the Expand icon and the document will open in a new window to make reading easier. After clicking the Expand button, the document will open in a new window. If a document is unsigned, there will be a pencil icon next to it, and the status column will show a status of something other than signed. If any documents are waiting your signature, you will see them in your chart desktop area. In the process overview, it was mentioned that paper outcome measure forms will still be completed by patients, who will then turn them into the front desk. The front desk will then enter the patient's answers into the patient centricity chart. Let's walk through the step-by-step process. From the centricity schedule, locate the patient's appointment and right-click on it. Then click Open Chart. You are taken directly to the patient's chart. Now click the New Document button. The Update Chart window will open. Review the provider and ensure it displays the name of the provider the patient will be seeing for today's visit. Change it if needed. Then in the Encounter Type list, scroll down and select Outcome Measures. Double-click it or highlight it and click OK. The Outcome Measures encounter opens in a new window. There are a total of 4 forms in this encounter type. Navigate to the form or forms that the patient completed. As you enter the patient's answers into the form, the score is automatically totaled for you. If a patient chose to not answer a question on the paper form, leave it blank in the encounter form too. Only the questions that are answered are scored. To fill in the answers for another tool, use the left navigation or click the Next Form button. If you do not see the total score field on the form you are filling out, switch to the Text tab and you can find it there. The Text tab is the narrative note that is auto-generated based on the answers that are being filled out in the form's view. When you are done, click the End button in the upper right-hand corner. The End Update window appears. Ensure the provider name is correct, and then click the Hold Document button. The Outcome Measure document is now ready for the provider to review in the patient's chart. Return to the Centricity Schedule screen, right-click on the patient's appointment, and change their status to Arrived. We have now completed our tour of the 3 main components of Centricity charts. Now let's continue on to the next section of document management. The new document management process is similar to the current process. The scanner machines will be updated so that scanned documents automatically get saved to the correct temporary folder for each clinic. Files will need to be reviewed and renamed in the temporary folder location. The file naming convention remains patient ID number, last name, and document type. You will then log into the new document management application, pull in a file or files from the temporary folder location, and index them with the appropriate document type, patient name, provider name, and clinic location. The documents are then accessible in the patient centricity chart in the Documents section. Go to the next slide for a demonstration. Here's the scenario we are going to go through. You have just scanned a paper-informed consent form that was signed by patient Billy Demo in the Bloomington Clinic. The scanner in BNCC automatically saves the document in the Temp Scan Images folder for the Bloomington Clinic. You navigate to the Temp Scan Images folder location and set it up as a favorite so it's easier to get to in the future. Once you've arrived at the full folder location, right-click on Favorites on the left navigation and select Add Current Location to Favorites. Using the Date Modified field to sort, or just by opening and viewing the documents in the folder, you find Billy's consent form. You right-click on it and click Rename. Type in his patient ID number, his last name, and the document type, and then hit Enter on your keyboard. After logging into the document management application, select the file path for your clinic temp scan images by clicking the Path button and navigating the folder structure. After doing this once, it will default to the last used location. In the Available Files list, scroll through and double-click on Billy's document. His document gets removed from the Available Files section and gets added to the Files Import section. Now select the document type from the drop-down menu. Click the Look Up Patient F4 button. Just like in Centricity, type in the patient's last name followed by first name and click Find, or press Enter on your keyboard. When the search results are returned, double-click on the patient's record. Next, select the patient's provider, either the responsible provider from the patient's chart, or if the document contains a provider's name, use that one. Select the location of care and then click the Import Document button. Once the document is imported, it is removed from the Available Files section and from the Files to Import section. It is also deleted from the Temp Scan Images folder. This makes it very important to make sure you are indexing the document to the right patient. The current audit process will continue. The next document in the queue automatically loads in the Files to Import section. The system assumes that you want to index the document to the same patient. If that's the case, then just update the document type and any other needed information. If that is not the case and the document is for another patient, you can either click the Look Up Patient button and change the other information, or highlight the document in the Files to Import section and click the left arrow to remove it from the section altogether. Looking up Billy Demo's patient chart in Centricity, the document you indexed is accessible in the Document section. Faxing documents from Centricity is possible and is almost as easy as printing. In order to fax, you will need to click the Print button, choose the Fax Print server, select a recipient, add an optional cover letter, and send. From the patient's chart, navigate to the document you want to fax, or at a minimum, to the patient's chart. Then click Print on the ribbon. In the Print window, choose your document, which is defaulted to the document you've highlighted. Select the BISCOM fax printer and click Print. In the Fax window, click the Select button in the Recipient section. Choose the category of recipient from the Show field. Highlight the recipient and then click OK. You can choose to add a fax cover letter and type in comments. Click Fax when you are ready to send. You are returned to the Print window so that you can send another fax or printed document. If you are done faxing and printing, click Close. Once the fax server has attempted to send your fax, a fax receipt will appear in the Document section of the patient's chart with the delivery status, sender, recipient, patient ID, number of pages sent, and document that was sent. You can also view the status of faxes you have sent by going to your chart desktop and clicking on Fax Status. We have now completed all major agenda items for this training. Take a moment to read through some of the key points that were covered in this training. In closing, we are looking forward to having an EHR that is compliant with federal programs, is stable for our providers, interns, and staff, and can be expanded to include a patient portal. This is a large-scale effort that is impacting everyone in the clinics. With changes such as these, it is important to stay informed, stay patient, and assume best intentions as we all go through the learning process together. We've covered the primary components of GE centricity, document management, and faxing. Each of these changes should help introduce some efficiencies for the clinics. Thank you for watching this training. You are welcome to refer to this as often as needed. Additional resources will also be made available.